that
Maybe
mean,
he's got
Rashad?
Wild Nocto in his heart.
Because you're on the
No,
TV.
just being like a like if I was
You used to have like little crowds. Yeah.
like I was bumping elbows and stuff.
Sorry about that. What?
I think it's cool. Like, just all the time, it's different.
I'm hungry. Sit here and don't even get to eat lunch. I would if I could cry.
One of the little known facts about our content and coverage manager, Glenn, is feelingless. He had the feelings surgically removed from himself years ago.
Okay. I think I had the longest time without crying in our Star City Games competition of who can remember the last time they cried. Mine was, I think, 3rd grade.
Wow.
It's a long time. I'm not saying I never cried since then, but that's the last one I can remember.
You clearly haven't seen Old Yeller recently.
No, actually, that was when I saw Little Princess. So, Little Princess out there. Tear jerker.
Okay, I can hear in the background the caterwaulings of Jasper Johnson Epstein, a 2-time Star City Games standard open top 8 competitor, now in the top 8 of the draft challenge for Indianapolis.
Looking to lock up a draft open. That's interesting. Oh, we got a card, broke sleeve.
As
Change of deck. We got the sleeve fixed? Yeah. We got that. So. Splits his opponent's sleeves and makes them replace them. Gotcha. Alright. Jacob Van Lunen back, which means Glenn gets to eat food. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you, Glenn.
Hello everybody, Jacob Van Lunen back in the booth. I'd like to thank Glenn Jones for giving me an opportunity to eat lunch, take a little break.
I would like to thank him for the same thing. That's exactly what I was able to accomplish while he was in here. Now we see a ponder here showing a Cunning Wish, a land. I believe it was a... I missed what kind of land, and another blue spell, but whatever the case may be, it was not what Michael Bernat wants. Michael Bernat's deck is running... we don't have the other list. Is running 20 lands, but he's trying to use kind of the Xerox style effects of 4 Preordain, 4 Ponder, 4 Brainstorm as a means to shrink that deck down so that it doesn't matter so much. 4 Explore as well.
The one blue sun zenith is just huge here.
Oh my god, we were talking about that last night.
Yeah, you don't have to play 2 strokes anymore.
Okay, and Dan Lashbrooke cracks a Misty Rainforest, I believe.
Yeah, it looks like Canadian Thresh. So it looks like Dan Lashbrooke is on Canadian Thresh. I saw a Lightning Bolt in his hand. I saw green cards in his deck. And just fetch it for Volcanic Island. He ponders it up. There's been some debate in the Magic community as to whether Ponder or Preordain is the better card. Personally, I'm a Preordain fan.
I like the slow trip version. Portent. That way you can hide that card on top of your library during your own turn.
Since the art's also awesome. It's like, where did you get those clothes, man? I don't know where he shops.
Okay, we've got a daze on Dan Lashbrook's side. Nice. The second land out.
Yeah, Looks like he's playing Fire and Ice, one of my favorite cards ever made.
Explore. Resolves. Gets him a little bit further in. Gets him a land.
Explore seems like it's really good in this type of archetype.
I mean, the danger of Explore is exposure to Wasteland.
Wasteland, yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, it really lets you replace the effect of Thawing Glaciers with regards to how this deck plays out over time.
Yeah.
The early game effect is very different than Thawing Glaciers. The early game effect is just an acceleration, which is amazing because you can literally go off on turn 3 and do it much more comfortably. But the late game effect, as you're going off, is much more like Thawing Glaciers.
That's very true.
We have the other list for his opponent, Daniel Lashbrooke, now. It's been brought by our runner.
Oh, and he's playing Green Sun Zenith.
Really? Wow. 2 Green Sun Zenith to get 4 Tarmogoyf or 4 Nimble Mongoose. And does he have... No, he does not have the Dryad Arbor as a fetch target.
He probably hasn't received that tech yet. Something like that. Or, you know, his deck doesn't really seem like it would ever want a...
Well, I actually still like the possibility of it with Misty Rainforest. Just to be like, EOT, get a 1/1, here he comes.
Yeah, no, that's true. Especially like if he had equipment, which he does not. But
Yeah, he does not have equipment, but in the sideboard he has Trigon Predator as a possible target as well.
that seems very good.
Okay, so because of the Explore, it's 3 lands to Dan Lashbrooke's 2. And literally, if Dan Lashbrooke, lays a creature, I'm not saying Michael Bernat's hand can do this right now, but he could actually try to go off on the next turn.
Yeah, I mean, his opponent does have a daze. I don't know if that's quite enough.
Okay, let's see how this looks.
He has a spiral in his hand.
I believe we're going to see a Ponder.
Honestly,
There it is. It's so hard when you're talking about a deck that has 12 1-mana library manipulation to even think about doing anything other than letting each one of them resolve. But every time it happens, you're just getting a little bit sculpted towards, this possible explosive turn.
It's really difficult to, keep up with that type of card manipulation when you're playing against combo. I had the pleasure of playing Ponder and Preordain in the same deck in Standard for a little while, and I can tell you that it's not very fair.
I mean, you can still play that deck in Extended. Now that it's,
That's
you get to add in
The power level extends a little bit higher, though.
Manamorphose. You get to add Manamorphose into that
People
one.
get to play. People are fighting Prismatic Omens, which makes the Ascension a lot worse.
Then the Spellstutter spread is particularly powerful against that line of plays.
It's true.
Okay. Just thinking about an incidental burn spell. Now, does Dan Lashbrooke have any idea what his opponent is playing?
I don't know.
Like...
Yeah, it could very reasonable just be a threshold deck.
He's got that lightning bolt up at the top of his hand, like he's ready to use it, but it really depends on what he thinks his opponent is. Okay. He untaps, prepares to attack with a Nimble Mongoose.
And this game could just end the next turn.
Yeah.
Does Bernat have a High Tide in his hand?
Bernat moves his hand around enough I can't quite tell. I think I see a counterspell.
Yeah, I see a Counterspell, I see a Cunning Wish for sure, and I see a Time Spiral for sure, but...
I have to say, one of the things that's kind of cool, you don't see counterspell very much in Legacy. I feel like you see Spell Snares, you see Force of Wills, you see Spell Pierces, but counterspell, that's a classic that you just don't see much anymore. Untap.
more of the.
And his opponent is tapped out.
So if he has the high tide,
I believe I see a high tide on the far left of his hand.
I believe it's Cunning Wish. I'm not sure. That may be the Fallen Empire's high tide with the
With the merfolk and
with the bubbles.
Yep, that's what I think it
Yeah.
is. But he is weak to a daze if a daze were to pop.
It's true.
How many cards do you have? 4. Thinking about it. High tide. Thinking about it.
Do it.
Fire Ice, Nimble Mongoose, Lightning Bolt, and a blue card. I don't believe that that's a Force of Will. Here he goes. High tide. It's that merfolk bubbly high tide. Okay, I want Dan Lashbrooke to show us what he's got. He's doing some counting. That leftmost card is the one I'm concerned about.
Turns out there was a pretty nice because of software error. Easily reported it resulted in 2 O's and getting card now. Or 2 O getting card now.
So
Wow.
now what Michael Bernat's going to do here is his plan is to create like an arbitrarily large amount of mana and then start casting time spirals.
Yep, he's going to start with Turnabout, which lets him play around a daze. He can actually play around 2 dazes with this Turnabout. High Tide Turnabout. 2 mana floating. He has access to 10 mana. He's essentially probably contemplating whether he wants to cast Explore right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a somewhat risky endeavor.
Not really, because if he casts it, he doesn't have to lay the land right away.
Well, he doesn't know if he's going to get a land.
He's going to cast Time Spiral.
Well, that's true, but does the Explorer do the...
He doesn't do it immediately. You can do it the rest of the turn.
Oh, he has 8 mana. I thought he had 2 floating.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I was under the impression that it would open his spiral up to days.
Nope,
Okay.
not at all. Not at all. He went into this with 2. Now he's got 10. Minus 6 is 4 mana floating. And he's about to have 4 mana floating with the ability to make 8 more. I think I liked casting the Explore there. And that is a daze. The daze doesn't do anything. It might be worth casting just to, like, you know, put 1 less mana in his pool. Like, pay. And then we get the Time Spiral effect. Let's get new hands, gentlemen.
Do it.
Now, one of the things that people have said is that they don't want to cast Time Spiral.
Oh, we had a counterspell in his hand, not a Cunning
That's
Wish.
yeah, but that's. I understand that he kept the 2 blue open for a counterspell, but that actually doesn't mean anything in terms of the.
Yeah, he could, but not pay for days.
Yeah, he
also.
couldn't. He couldn't. He played around everything. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. That's acceptable. I mean, if he's worried about that level, I mean, and Mike Bernat is the kind of guy that will worry about that level of stuff. We
Yeah.
remember that he didn't lay a aggressive Gideon yesterday, which cost him because he was trying to play around Koth.
Sure.
So a lot of
I
people
don't
have.
see any meditates in this list.
No, Meditate's bad.
It's bad now?
Meditate. It was always bad. that's my opinion. All of the old school high tide lists that ran Meditate were weaker than the ones that didn't, and only the solidarity lists, the so-called solidarity lists in Legacy, from recent times were using it. And most of the people I know only felt that solidarity was a good deck when other people were not at all prepared for anything like that.
Fair enough.
So anyway, a lot of people have said that when you get, you know, Time Spiral, you're just going to refill your opponent with Force of Will. But you know what? You get your Force of Wills too.
So Counterbalance sold out today, and it's a $10 card.
I don't know if I have any. It's a good thing I hate playing that card.
I have Counterbalance. So
Here's the Explorer from the floating mana from before.
Steve Sadin, his graduation present from BDM when he finished college was the original art for Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top, which is
That's
pretty
awesome.
Yeah, it's Steve's favorite 2 cards of all time.
Mike Bernat plays 2 land off of his land for the turn and off of an Explorer. His opponent does have 1 Force of Will, and it might have 1 Daze. Usually at this point, though, it doesn't matter.
It's true.
You'll note that before this turn got underway, at the end of his opponent's turn, he put up a Counterspell War versus a Tarmogoyf, and I think a part of it was just to try to, get a Counterspell out of the other guy's hand, just to soak something up.
Turnabout it in time spiral.
Yeah,
And once you spiral, they get a new hand. But
it's just once you get going, you usually don't care. In my experience,
Yeah.
the only time that I have lost when I cast Time Spiral and my opponent was tapped out was when, after the match, a spectator told me that the person was cheating by selecting cards from his library via the Time Spiral. That's literally the only time I've lost after casting Time Spiral with an opponent that's tapped out.
And
I think I was telling you
it's a
about
pretty bad
that.
way to lose.
About that earlier, how in the course of that turn my opponent cast Force of Will 15 times. It's a lot of Force of Wills for a single turn.
It is a lot of Force of Wills.
And here we go. 10 more mana.
plus 15, but 2 of
Wow,
it's
Bernat's
gonna
deck
be
has access to Pyroblast and Hydroblast.
that, and then I'll have 15.
Does High Tide work that way?
Actually, I always thought that Pyroblast was overrated for High Tide.
So I don't know.
Yep,
Okay,
the way
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
yeah, it's an additional every time it's cast.
Okay.
Disrupt did the
Actually,
same
I
work
use
usually.
1 and 5, so go down to 10 and 1 green.
Okay.
To
That was my experience. I don't know.
time spiral attacks.
I played a lot of High Tide back then. That was the only deck I played. And what's he casting the Force on? Is that on a High Tide?
Time Spiral.
On a Time Spiral? That's a fight that Bernat wants to play. He doesn't look like he has the way to handle that. He's
Oh, he has
oh, he's got a Force in
hand.
his hand? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's not much to...
He's thinking about paying for the Force or pitching a card.
Actually, I should probably cast this.
Where's the stack? Okay, I've got the Time Spiral all shiny in the light.
Yeah.
And the
And
Force
the,
of Will
Force is on the
laying
right.
across the 2 lands of Dan Lashbrooke. He's going through, parsing. Which card to toss?
In response,
Does he also have a counter spell?
in response,
What is that?
That is a Blue Sun Zenith.
Oh.
or I have 11. I want to keep 2 up.
So what he's doing is he's casting the Blue Sun Zenith with the free mana that he has into his deck, looking for a card for the Force of Will, so that he can discard something else.
That's 11 minus 2 is
He's got to make sure that he
made for
leaves
6.
Enough
a little bit of mana
for
back
days, yeah.
to block days.
And there's the days. He pays for it. He's got the mana back. Still got apparently 1 floating.
Yeah.
And draw my 6.
I wonder how many cards he gets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember to shuffle that Zenith back in. Force away something.
And then this gets shuffled. And what does that take? This takes the storm up pretty
Wait.
What?
No, that's fine.
That's
Yeah, he's like, don't worry about it. You're going to be using the Time Spiral in a second.
Time spiral.
No. I've got to do what the card says.
days for another force of will. So that's 4 more. So that puts it up to 11. Okay. So it's time spiral, untapping these.
Okay, Time Spiral.
Let's go again.
Here we go. Now you'll notice that from the last Time Spiral, he now has 1 less mana than he had going into it, but he has 2 more lands.
Yeah.
as the lands come out of his deck, it also means that he ends up having a situation where it's only a little bit at a time, but it keeps happening every time spiral sequence, that he gets more and more gas.
And every high tide he plays also just compounds.
Yeah, now this is one of the reasons why a part of me that I know is wrong, I know it's wrong, wants Thawing Glacier, because it's even more abundantly crazy when you have Thawing Glacier interacting with Turnabouts and with Time Spiral. But I know it's wrong. I just want it because I want to be playing in 1990, I guess, 9. Maybe 1998. I forget what year that was.
99.
You did a frantic research or frantic search.
I don't know. Round 2, they just conceded. I don't know.
I see a Turnabout. I see another High Tide.
Use my 1 blue.
Yeah, he is. His opponent has nothing.
High Tide for 2. Or I mean, for the second High Tide. So 3 mana per land.
Use 3. Brainstorm.
Yeah, so
Brainstorm.
it's brainstorming. He gets to put some lands back, which he will then promptly preordain away.
13.
And he's, I believe he's counting up the storm as
Yeah.
well. At this, one of his ways to win is Cunning Wishes to get Brain Freeze. His other way to win is Blue Sun Zenith. And that's basically his 2 paths to victory.
Yeah, I think the Cunning Wish is basically enough here, right? It should do it. He can just mill his opponent's entire library.
Here's a Merchant Scroll if he doesn't already have the Cunning Wish. Did you see a Cunning Wish in his
I
hand?
saw the Cunning Wish in his
Okay,
hand.
so he's
The
got
Merchant
his-
Scroll makes it irrelevant, though. The Merchant Scroll just means he won already.
He might go Merchant Scroll for a Force of Will here first.
Makes sense.
16.
And Cunning Wish for Brain Freeze. Brain Freeze away the library. Pump the fist and go to the next game.
Alright, so now I will, or no, I used
Wow.
2 of it, right?
The,
So I'm at 1? Yeah.
The counterspells are actually pretty good in this deck, huh?
Yeah.
I will
Yeah, counterspells are really great. They answer anything.
ponder.
Like, unless it has uncounterable.
17.
It's funny because after we saw the High Tide deck from
No, I'm building up
from
counter spells.
Grand Prix Kansas City, or not Grand Prix, from Star City Games Open Series Kansas City, I know that I was really excited to be just thinking about this deck, and I wonder if there is any space for Emrakul or if it's just too cutesy.
Yeah, I'm. It's interesting to think about the Emrakul gives you a way to win though without necessarily comboing at all.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind Emrakul in the main or in the board, right? Like, just as another way that things can go. You're like, okay, I don't have. Oh, Emrakul.
Yeah.
I'll be on the play.
Yeah.
You never. Who cares about the show and tell part, though, right? Just cast it. Just cast the Emrakul.
Yeah, that's how the painter decks have been doing. They're game 2 and 3s against a lot of archetypes.
As a Wish deck, Michael Bernat's sideboard has a lot of cards that are singletons for a good reason. He's got Croson Grip that he probably won't bring in until Game 3, and only if he sees something from Dan Lashbrooke that makes him want it. There are some Tormod's Crypts, but Tormod's Crypt is actually not too incredibly potent against Bernat. It's like a light tap across your shoulder while you're boxing.
Yeah, I mean his sideboard plan essentially here is Spell Pierces and Red Elemental Blasts,
Yeah.
which I assume will come in for any one of his 12 dead cards.
Yeah. I mean, Lightning Bolt, Fire and Ice. I would even say Green Sun Zenith is dead, just because it's too expensive.
He needs to kill his opponent.
I mean, actually, you know, maybe Green Sun Zenith is good because it gives you creatures 9 and 10 in your deck. And conversely, Bernat just brings in two Pyroblasts or 3 Pyroblasts, depending on if he ever wants to wish for Pyroblast. He could bring in Grips in Game 3.
That was right after this. The illusion
Yesterday was a lot of fairies and stuff.
But basically, he's not going to touch his deck too much. It's going to be probably 2 or 3 cards total. In this matchup, I actually might board in the Factor Fiction and take it out of the Wish board because you're not going to have time to wish for a Factor Fiction in general in this matchup. It's just not something you're likely to do.
See, but I don't think you're necessarily likely to cast it either unless you're actually comboing.
I think you can use it as a threat, like an end-of-turn threat. Remember, you've got your own counterspells and Force of
So you
Wills
can say,
to
like,
play Draw
Factor
Go.
Fiction,
Yeah.
like, and then like they're almost forced to let you resolve that.
Yeah, you're like
And
going to be
that's
like
pretty
this.
powerful,
End
yeah.
of turn, I happened to draw it and be like, fact? Exactly.
Yeah, like Foff you. Yeah.
I do have to say that with the rules change, I am pretty sad that you're no longer able to use wishes to get cards that were removed from the game. Exiled, yes. Exiled.
Yeah.
We have the hands being drawn. He's keeping into Zeniths, which actually, you know, on reflection, like I said, it does count as 9th and 10th creatures, so it's a 2-mana Nimble Mongoose or a 3-mana Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, he has some cards that are actually dead.
Yeah.
So I imagine those come out way before the game.
I mean, I only see 4 Lightning Bolts as actually dead. The Fire and Ices, the Ice part of it is actually real.
Kind of like you do upkeep, I
Yeah,
guess.
upkeep
but then,
Ice.
But then you're like, I guess but you only, like they could just tap it for mana and then
For 1 less mana.
1 less mana. So
That
you
matters
pay
sometimes.
2 mana and draw a card to drain their mana pool by 1.
Or
That
you
doesn't
do it
seem
on
very
their, or you do it
impressive to
on
me.
their upkeep before they try to go off, you know, like.
I mean that's fine.
Well, 1 less mana and then a daze on top of it's 2 mana. Yeah. He can't turn about it.
Yeah. Considering how Bernat has played thus far, I don't think we're going to.
Bernat is not okay.
He is
yeah.
not going to lose to an ice.
I don't know about the ice part, but Bernat is not going to go for the turn 3 high tide.
Yeah, I mean-
that's not happening.
And you shouldn't necessarily go for a turn 3 high tide often. It's like playing elves. Like so many people did poorly playing elves because they tried to go off as soon as possible.
Right.
When you're playing most combo decks, you want to just sit there and sculpt until the turn before you're going to die.
Well, and remember we were talking earlier about combo decks, for those of you who were here earlier, and this is a control deck. What Mike Bernat is playing is a draw go deck.
Oh yeah.
You only go off on turn 3 with high tide if you're desperate or if you're a super lucky guy.
Now, Dan here is, ooh, he's dazing the ponder.
That's not unreasonable. I mean, if he's thinking that his opponent, if he doesn't have much else going on, right, that ponder can actually potentially sculpt something dangerous, and he might not get a chance
Sure.
to daze later.
Ooh, we've got a snap in the main now for Bernat.
Now, he might have decided that with that snap, he's not going to wish for it, so might as well just play it, you know? That's the common way to remember that even if you've got singletons in your board, if you would play it, but you wouldn't have time to wish for it, just put it in your deck. Slide it on in.
It makes sense.
Now, the question of what he boarded out is always of note. It might be possible that he boarded out one counter. This is how I probably would do it: boarding out one counterspell, boarding out one high tide, and boarding out one other card that is kind of more of a helper, like a ponder or a preordain, because you're upgrading your counterspell to a pyroblast for the purposes of destroying a counterspell war, right? And you actually have to slow down in the face of an aggro control deck. You can't just push into it. So making your combo go a little bit slower is fine by you.
That's reasonable.
He's got more than double the mana of his opponent, and he hasn't even started the high tide action yet. I see a counterspell. I think I saw a land. The ponder finds a shuffle, or it finds a counterspell. That's a brainstorm.
Yeah, he's storming.
Go. Pyroblast is in Dan Lashbrooke's hand. There's a Green Sun Zenith. I think I see a Force of Will, a Fire Ice, and two other blue spells.
Now, Dan Lashbrooke, it's kind of an interesting thing for him because he's afraid to tap his mana.
Yeah.
Because if he does, he knows there's a chance he can just die. But in the same sense, like, the longer he just passes the turn without playing lands,
Yeah.
like, he's just getting further and further behind in this game.
He says go. I think that's the right play, but it's not
It doesn't
happy.
seem
It's
good
not
for
a happy
him, yeah.
play. It's a shame he doesn't have a Dryad Arbor. And at this, Michael Bernat is happy to play draw go here. That's what his deck does.
Yeah.
Brian Kowal famously said that High Tide wasn't the best combo deck because it was the fastest, but because it was the one that could say no the longest.
Again, it's similar to Elves in that fashion. Like, the power that Elvish Visionary and Wirewood Symbiote had. It's just slowing down your opponent, preventing them from ever doing anything while creating incremental advantage for yourself was really unbelievable. Like, the Zoo matchup was extraordinarily hard to lose.
Zenith for the Nimble Mongoose. Go ahead. That puts me on a 7-turn clock, I guess.
Yeah.
Not even a 7-turn clock.
Yeah,
He's
he
only got
doesn't have
5.
Thresh yet.
Yeah. Yeah, he'll get to threshold quick enough, but
So it looks like he kept in the Fire Ices. He probably just took out bolts.
just bolt seems fine to me. Interestingly, Spell Snare doesn't hit very much from his opponent. It only hits Counterspell, Explore, and Merchant Scroll. I mean, those are all cards that are fine to hit, but it's
Yeah, the fact that he missed the
misses all the
missed the
brainstorms.
Explorer. It was he drew it the turn after Bernat cast Explorer.
Yeah. One of the cards I find myself wondering whether it's too slow for this deck is we've got the Ponders, the Preordained, and the Brainstorms. Is there any room for Impulse, or is that just too slow? Is 2 mana way too much?
I feel like it's just a strictly inferior Merchant Scroll, and he's not even playing 4 copies of that.
I think it might be closer to an inferior preordain, actually. But, you know, the same difference.
Yeah.
And he casts another manipulation spell. Both of those cards get buried. He draws a sack land. Fetch land if you prefer.
Now he's
Gonna explore again, maybe?
seems reasonable.
Yep, explore again.
And that'll be a spell snare.
Yeah, he lets it go though, I think, because he doesn't realize that there's not much else for him to hit.
Yeah, maybe he's afraid of like counterbalance or something like that. Well, it seems very unlikely. Like he knows he's playing against the high tide deck.
Maybe he's saving it for counterspell. You're fighting the counterspell war.
That's reasonable.
Yeah. He already definitely has seen counterspells at this point, so. And Mike says go. Now sitting at a 7 mana to 3 mana. Mike takes 1, goes down to 18. Now the second Mongoose actually represents a pretty big threat because of that Fire Ice and things like Force of Will. It means that he's going to have the ability to kill Bernat in 3 turns.
I mean, Bernat probably has enough at this point to go off.
I don't know that he has it in his hand, though. The Merchant Scroll is going to maybe be cast. He realizes that puts his opponent to
Time Spiral does not untap all of your lands.
only 6 lands.
Only 6.
That puts him to 6 cards in the graveyard, 1 away from Threshold. Time Spiral, Force of Will. Counterspell is the last one, perhaps? I'm not sure. Brainstorm, that's exactly what he wanted. Means he gets Threshold. The only other way for him to get Threshold that turn is if he were to draw some other Brainstorm-like effect, or if he were to main phase his Fire Ice. To be fair, he could throw away his Red Elemental Blast, but I mean, I'm talking about rational ways.
I mean, now he's got to feel pretty comfortable.
3-turn clock, 2
Yeah.
more after this.
He's got he only needs to bash twice more. He has a Red Elemental Blast, Spell Pierce, and a Force Will in his hand. It's a lot for his opponent to fight through.
Is that 2 Force of Wills?
It does look like
That
double.
looks like 2 Force of Wills. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, one is basically just pitch fodder to the other, though, right? Because he only has one other blue card, it's Spell Pierce.
You can toss the Spell Pierce, right? Like, or, you know, you draw a blue card here, and then you've got... Okay. Knocks him down to 6, I believe.
And he's your another blue card. Seems pretty
Gotta go now.
I'll sack this again.
Crack it.
Sure.
And then I'll sack this again.
Okay. You go to 4.
Okay, so
Down to 4. This is the turn.
this is when he just needs to go off. If he doesn't go off right now, he will die.
There you go.
Here's a land.
And the top of this library is going to be very important. What do you get? That's a Blue Sun Zenith. High Tide. Not the fight you want to be making, my friend. High Tide doubles your mana too. Force of Will, getting rid of the Zenith.
Force of Will removing Ponder.
Scoopsy scoopsies.
Packs it in.
That was actually incorrect. What he should do is let that resolve. He's got enough mana left to cast the Time Spiral and just see. Maybe his opponent doesn't have another counterspell. He happens to have it, but you know, you actually want to just check.
I thought he said, "Do you have another counterspell?" His opponent.
I didn't. I can't hear it.
Yeah, I can't hear it either. But his opponent, when his opponent cast the thing, like shortly after he cast the thing, he went like this with his hand.
Oh, okay. That's
So-
fair. If he revealed his hand, then
I
scooping
feel
up
like-
makes total sense.
I feel like there was probably some audio that we didn't get. Is that true or no? Okay. I mean, I don't think Bernat's the type to pack it in prematurely.
He's revisiting the sideboard, making sure he likes his plan.
Michael Bernat is a recent top 8 competitor. He top 8'd the Standard Open yesterday, playing blue-white control.
Yeah, and Michael Bernat, I believe, has top 8'd at 2 Grand Prix as well.
I believe that's also true, yes. Again, this is Jacob Van Lunen. I'm here with Adrian Sullivan, and we're at the Star City Games Open Series here in Indianapolis. We're watching the Legacy Open. This is an exciting new format. Since the Betting of Survival, we've had a number of archetypes popping up, and it seems like the format is much more open, and people can play a lot more decks. This High Tide deck is something that's brand new, considering Time Spiral has recently been unbanned. We haven't seen many High Tide decks doing well, but Michael Bernat is a very good player, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him do very well with this type of archetype.
Brand new in the oldest kind of way.
Oh yeah, this archetype is as old school as Heavy D and the boys. So. Now,
Maybe another way to put it, this archetype is so old school, Mike Flores and I were still working on Magic decks together.
There you go.
Mike Flores is a ridiculous human being. I like Mike Flores.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is there any land in there?
Yes.
Okay, he's got the one land to get started with his
That's about all he
Xerox
needs.
engine. Yeah.
He has. I haven't heard it be called the Xerox engine since probably 2001, so I appreciate that.
I mean, that's what this is, right? This is a Xerox High Tide.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's precisely what this is.
For those of you who don't remember the Turbo Xerox deck that was designed by Alan Comer, basically it was a, if I remember correctly, a Quirion Dryad deck that ran very, very few lands and was running land grants, preordained, not preordained because that didn't exist yet, but ponders, that kind of card. And it was later updated. Yeah, Miracle Grow, my bad, pardon me. The Xerox was the mono blue, my bad.
I think it was like Portent and Brainstorm.
Yeah, my bad. The Xerox was mono blue control with like very few lands the same way, like 18 lands. Pardon me. Thank you, Rashad. I was mixing up my old school Alan Comer decks. Later updated by Brian Kibler to be Super Grow. Rashad thinks that Super Grow is not as awesome. I agree. I lost in the finals to Super Grow once, so I don't like it as much. We've got a Nimble Mongoose coming in.
Ooh, it's a brutal one.
Yeah, and no third land, or no second land for Dan Lashbrooke. Main phase Brainstorm looking for the land. Will Michael Bernat have a counterspell to stop it? It might be worth
And will he
casting.
want-
It resolves.
I mean, considering the nature of Dan Lashbrooke's like type of counter magic, allowing him to get more lands isn't necessarily like too scary, because Daniel Lashbrooke's lands are, you know, they allow him to play a threat like Tarmogoyf, but besides that, they have little to no effect.
No, I mean, there's a difference between 2 lands and 1 land.
Oh, certainly. I suppose he could cast multiple spell snares and things like that. Okay, so Mike's going in the tank here. Though, you need to just walk yourself through the turn and think about what's going to happen when he plays Forceful. What's going to happen when he plays a Spell Snare? What's going to happen when he plays a Daze? You need to ask yourself all of these questions and then combine the answers to each. And doing that, you can figure out whether or not it's appropriate to cast High Tide on this turn.
He's certainly not going to cast High Tide. He's got a Turnabout in his hand. What he's going to do almost certainly is when he's ready to go off, he's going to cast Turnabout targeting his opponent to tap all of the lands.
I don't know about that. Again, I think the nature of the counter magic in Dan Lashbrooke's deck is, I mean, it's free. The only cards that cost mana that you'd have to pay for are the Elemental Blast, or, I mean, I think that's just about it, right?
What I was saying actually is essentially that you cast that Turnabout when you're ready, because even if the counter magic is largely free, the cost of it being free still cuts it in half. You know, your Force of Will. And he still looks like his hand is far from being sculpted to be able to cast the combo. I see a Force of Will, a Turnabout. I think I see a High Tide, but I'm not 100% sure.
I often wish there were a way to
Second Turnabout.
counterbalance in this type of deck.
I think that just takes up so much space.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I still want to play it. Isn't Dived Out just the best card in the format? Or is Vial the best card?
I don't think if you can't afford to play Impulse and High Tide, I don't think you can play Sensei's Divining Top.
That makes sense.
So I see Turnabout, Force of Will, Brainstorm, something.
I mean, that's a pretty impressive hand.
Merchant Scroll, High Tide, and something. Autumn's Veil?
It does look like an Autumn's Veil.
Oh, what a monster turn. Wow.
That's so sick!
Holy crap.
That's just so sick.
Oh my god. Autumn's Veil. Mike Bernat has Autumn's Veil in his hand.
Yeah. Ironically,
Yep.
wow.
Okay. He taps down, putting a Tarmogoyf into play to make the clock incredibly short. And now it's going to be the opportunity for Bernat to go for it. It's the High Tide, which Force of Will, and I believe we're going to see a Autumn's Veil in response, which is just going to destroy the world for Dan Lashbrooke. He's got to counter that Autumn's Veil. Yep, there you go. He can pay for it, because if that resolves... Okay.
Yeah, it's got
2 days. Now he forces, leaves the Turnabout back, casts the Turnabout.
The High Tide.
Okay. Sack a land, 4 mana, cast Turnabout. It can't be countered by anything because Autumn's Veil has now resolved. Besides Mindbreak Trap, Glenn Jones. Besides Mindbreak Trap. Okay.
It's funny, cards like Mindbreak Trap, they've never really seen play in any of like the newer formats, but they're really good in formats like Vintage and Legacy at keeping common decks in check.
Turnabout untaps 10 mana for Mike Bernat, and then when this Time Spiral hits, he's going to have 4 mana floating, and no Force of Wills are going to be able to come back to do anything to help Dan Lashbrooke out.
Yeah, the Autumn's Veil is just a massive beating here.
That was just insane how good that was.
Things look pretty good for Mike here.
I would say that for Mike Bernat to not win this, what's going to happen is he's going to have the very rare Time Spiral whiff. It happens, but especially in a deck that runs 4 Brainstorm, 4 Ponder, 4 Preordain, and then Merchant Scrolls and Cunning Wish, it's not likely. Yeah, and 4 Explorer. It's just not very likely.
Okay, let's do a Zelda Spiral.
I think I see another Spiral, a Blue Sun Zenith, an Explorer.
Okay, I'll use the green and the blue.
And the Explorer here is going to allow him to just combo off right away. His opponent's tapped out. There's basically no chance at this point. His opponent getting back in the game.
12. So we'll get 2 of it in green and 10 in blue.
4 mana becomes 16 mana.
Explore the blue
That's
to
a lot of mana.
untap my lands.
Those dazes are very dead.
Well, they're already deaf. Autumn's Veil.
Yeah.
The whole turn.
Add another 12, so I go to 20.
16
Autumn's
becomes
Veil is just such a beating. It's like the Orms chant.
16 becomes 12 becomes 24, back down to 20, and then becomes
Dan Lashbrooke doesn't
32.
have like an off-camera volcanic island, does he? For his pyroblast that he has in his hand?
No.
Because that would be hilarious if like post Autumn's Veil he like got him.
Going to 22.
Okay.
And
32 mana in pool. Time Spiral makes it 26 mana floating.
Why don't you just draw like 7 lands?
It's a lot.
that's never happened yet. Or
Thank you.
lands and counters. It's possible. That's why it's important to explore as many times. with the lands.
Now they're shuffling up, taking their new Time Spiral hands.
Dan Lashbrooke looking pretty excited about the situation. Nothing here to save him, except for his opponent getting nothing. It does happen sometimes.
The old whiff.
The whiff happens.
Spiral.
I mean,
yeah, no, I mean it certainly happens.
21.
the tide's on 3.
And islands are making 3. Preordain.
24 mana floating.
Now, with the whiff factor,
23 mana floating.
is there any way to just minimize that and make it not happen at all?
Honestly, the whiff factor, the
It
best
gets
way to
smaller
minimize
as you
it,
go, 'cause
yeah,
you use
is
fetch lands.
things like well, fetch lands go back into the deck, so that
Yeah,
doesn't
but
help.
they get the islands out of your deck.
But
So
that's
they,
the
like-
same difference. Yeah, you're breaking even. That doesn't help. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Honestly, the only way to do it is to actually do things like purposefully, when you know you can't be stopped, Force of Will, tossing away cards like Force of Will from your deck, so that there's less cards like that in your deck.
17 blue, 1
Makes
green.
sense, especially
So I
when
go to
it's post Autumn's Veil
Yeah.
and you just got the clear. Autumn's Veil is so good.
And I'll use
Yeah, like one of the things, Autumn's Veil seems really good for this deck. Time Spiral again. Now, the fact that he's casting that Time Spiral again is actually kind of bad news. It means that he didn't find anything to get off with. So, you know, essentially he's going to go for, what, is this number 3? Is that the 3rd time spiral?
It is, in fact, the 3rd time spiral. And he could just whiff.
It doesn't happen but very often, but without thawing glaciers as a means to keep stretching out. The lands
You're just
of the
really
deck.
pushing that, aren't you?
Hey, if he had had thawing glaciers, right, he would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He'd have 7 more lands in play if he had thawing glaciers.
That is true. He would have.
Well, he wouldn't have these crappy tropical islands. Oh, I don't know, for something. Okay. So we see Merchant Scroll for the win.
there.
There we go. He's like, show me. show me.
Go down to 1, use a
Okay, says Mike Bernat.
I will show you. Merchant Scroll.
Explore
All right.
first.
He's just slow rolling. Oh, you want me to show you? All right, let's do this.
So you're gonna draw the rest of your six. What are you gonna do?
I'll show you.
As long as I see that you win.
You know, one of the things, I think I shared this anecdote before, but watching Turbo Bob Wagner playing against Jacob Janoska, where Jacob had been lobotomied, had no strokes of genius left, no theoretical way to win, and Bob was like, well, show me how you're going to win then. So Jacob just turnabouted and time spiraled and frantic searched and untapped and tapped Bob's City of Brass until he died.
I'll use my green and 26 to explore.
Another explorer, bringing up the storm count.
I'll use blue to high tide.
Another high tide. He seems like this guy who just really enjoys playing Magic. He's like, hey, you know, I can get a little break right now. No, not really feeling a break right now.
Sack this.
The storm count on the
We
count
lost
I've had.
count
No,
of
oh, it's
one
actually at 29 million.
Just a guesstimation.
Go to 23, cast high tide. Islands are making 5.
Yeah, that's actually when I used to play. Glenn is singing. Is that Blondie? Yeah.
60
And
I'm a big Blondie fan.
I actually know that there were quite a few people that would sing what you were just roughly singing when they would play high tide back in the day.
going to 100.
The tide is high and I'm going off. Anyway,
Or did I spend the 4 to?
it's a corruption of a Blondie song. It's not the real song.
I didn't, so I'll take 8 off 105 after I turn it off.
I think
Debbie Harry's one of the coolest people in the universe.
Debbie Harry is really, really cool. I'll watch a video drum and then you'd be like, wow. Merchant Scroll. The
Blue Sunset.
Would you like to draw?
Hey, look what I
100
have, pal.
cards?
Still have all these.
the